Welcome everyone to the show, Combustible Elements, real talk for real people. Here we try to put different ideas and perspectives together in a pot, heat it up, and get an explosion of knowledge and understanding. We understand that problems can only be fixed starting from the bottom to the top, building a great foundation for change and improvement. I'm Big Mel, and I'm joined by Ruben, aka the Monarch, and Aaron, the Hitman. Let's get
Okay,
started.
thank you everyone for joining us for on Combustible Elements. We have a special guest. We always try to talk about real topics, and this is a real topic in society, and it's really a very big topic for minorities, especially. Okay, I'm joined by Aaron the Hitman, Ruben the Monarch. Ruben's just been usurped today. He's a monarch, but I just came back from Colombia, so I'm the king of Colombia for the night. So that's why I had a hat. And then we're joined, and she's going to introduce herself, and then she's going to tell us what's on her mind. So please introduce yourself, Avis.
Hello, everyone. My name is Avis Garrett, and it's bothered me for so many years not being able to associate why I feel a certain way because I didn't have my dad. We just reunited after 45 years, and I'm coming to find the effect of not having him in my life and the choices that I've made have suffered because I didn't have that dad.
Okay, so first and foremost, whether a parent is around or whether they're gone, they leave a lasting effect. It's like a scar that can never go away. It can be a positive scar. Yes, they imprint themselves upon you, but it can also be negative. Depending on the person being around could be even negative. So this topic is a major topic because your first love is that parent. And if that parent doesn't do you in a worthwhile way, you'll be looking for chasing behind what that parent is in a lot of situations. And you won't even know you're doing it. So this is a major topic and it affects a lot of people in a lot of ways. Aaron, what do you think about this particular situation, just scratching it on the surface? We're going to go a little bit deeper with Avis on this topic.
Right. For me, it's a I would it's kind of a touchy topic. I'm not saying that my father wasn't there. I grew up in a house with my father, but then my parents separated, but I still had my father in my life. So in a way I can relate, but in a way I can't relate because my father was still active in my life. He just wasn't in the household. And then later on in my life, I had the opportunity to move in with my father and experience living with my father. So I do know people who grew up without a father and the effects that it had on them. And um, sometimes, like you said, sometimes it could be a negative effect and sometimes it could be a positive one. You don't really know what that effect is until later on in life. And when you look back on the experiences that you've been through and how not having a father may have shaped the decisions and the people that you interact with up until when you finally look back on that situation.
Okay, I have a question from your answer for Avis, but I'm going to let Ruben speak first. So, Ruben, how do you feel about this topic? What's going through your mind at this moment?
And I agree with Aaron in the sense of like I had the opportunity to have both. So not well, growing up, I grew up with my dad, and then my father and my mom separated for a couple of years. So then I wasn't living with my dad, but the effects that he had on me growing up, even when he wasn't in the household, he was still like heavily influenced, with everything, a lot of decisions that I made. So I can definitely relate when I say, it's extremely important to have your father in your life, and it's extremely important, you know, to have that relationship because you could have that person there and y'all don't have a good relationship. So then that goes back to what you were saying as far as something negative, but making sure that like if you have a mom or a dad, having them in your life is one thing, but having a good relationship with them is even better.
Okay, so I have a daughter. Aaron, you have a different perspective because you don't have a daughter. Ruben, you have two daughters, right? Yes. So we're going to really we're talking about fathers in your life, but it's different for us as men being raised a certain way with fathers in your life to Avis with not having a father in your life. So before we even go further with that topic, Avis, did you have someone that stepped in for your father for the years that he wasn't with you?
My mother married my stepfather when I was 6. And at first it was a wonderful relationship between my mother and I. And she married, and I saw that he didn't treat her good, meaning tempers. And he would always look at me as if I jumped out of the closet on their wedding day when you dated my mom for 4 years prior to the marriage. And I did everything in my power as a kid to try to get this man to accept me. I just wanted him to love me. I just wanted, I craved something positive out of the whole situation. And it was looking back on it, it was the worst way to bring up a child. I remember people who didn't even know us, but they were his relatives, who would say, "Why are you like that to that little girl? She's, can't you see what she's trying to do?" I imitated everything from the Shilton's guide to learning how to fix a car to I can play every sport. I can sit here and watch TV with any man. I know everything. I know how to drive an 18 wheeler because I wanted this man to accept me, and it never happened.
Okay,
And
so I'm sorry, go ahead. Continue.
no, that I realized that this has been a cycle in my family, and this is the 4th generation in which there was somebody else, and the women constantly looked for that approval. They wanted acceptance, and it is rolled into my life's decisions.
Okay, so before we get into the 4th generation and the acceptance, because I think that goes to a lot of women. What I am going to say about this, because I do feel I'm very opinionated when it comes to this topic. So I'll give you and our listeners a little backstory about me. I have multiple half sisters. My oldest sister, that was from my mom, I don't consider her a half sister. The reason I don't consider her a half sister is my father never considered any kid that was living in his household not one of his kids. So when he counts the kids, he counts those kids that were like maybe not biologically his, but they were in the relationship when he was in there. And he always treated them as such. My sister, not my older sister, but my older sister by my mom, her father treated me like I was a son. He brought me my first car. He was like, y'all all together. You know what I mean? I guess his philosophy was you guys are all together, y'all family. I'm part of this family, y'all part, but y'all take care of each other. You see what I'm saying? So when I hear that a man took 4 years to court your mother, knowing that you was there, like you said, you just popped out of a closet, and then all of a sudden, once the marriage changed, once the marriage is set, he changes on what his priority is with you. Like, I think that's just a despicable man. No, actually, I'm gonna say what's on my mind. I think that man's a piece of shit. That's just my opinion of it. And my opinion of it is, listen, separated, blended families are sometimes difficult. It can be difficult because you have outside influence from other parents. You know what I mean? But your father wasn't around. Your biological father wasn't around. So it was no man coming up to him and saying, don't do this with my daughter. Don't do that with my daughter. That is unacceptable. You know what I'm saying? All he had to do was fill that void. And I don't understand what the problem is with filling that void. Now, he may not have agreed with the proper way to fill that void, but he knew there was a void to be filled. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I just think the distance a child that you're going to live with, that's a part of the person that you're loving, are you supposed to be planning to spend your life with because you got married? I just think that's a piece of shit move. Now, to what you were going to say about the fourth generation thing. I feel like a lot of women through history, especially African-American women, but actually it's all women, try to get that man's approval a lot of times, the present day man. And sometimes when they try to get the approval of the present day man, they kind of like let their kids get pushed to the side. Now, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that in any form. I'll be the first one to say, if a man is with you and he's good enough for you, he should be good enough for your kids. If he's not good enough for your kids from the beginning, then he ain't good enough for you because your kids is the package deal. So if that person is good enough for you for that whole situation and that's how you judging it, then you should be able to do things together and then you should have a right relationship with that blended family. However, we know that's not the big for a lot of reasons. But I think a lot of, especially, well, I can only speak for minority women, a lot of Black women growing up used to do that. They used to set a line in the sand between their kids and a man. Like if that man means you well and means your kids well, he should be in your life. If that man don't mean your kids well, what the fuck are you dealing with it for? So Aaron or Ruben, what do you think about this topic, about the generational thing? And Avis, I think you were implying that got passed down from your grandma to your mom to you and maybe your daughter, and it's an ongoing thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, things generational, quote unquote, generational curses do happen like that over and over again because of past hurts. And like you said, you were seeking the approval of a man, and then if you don't get that approval, it kind of trickles down into your adulthood and your relationship and the way that you deal with men. But one question that we didn't address, at least not yet, which is because you said you reconnected with your father, right?
Yes.
Yeah, let's not do that yet. No, I want to ask a question about that. I do want to ask a question about it.
Yeah, well, the question I wanted to ask was, what was the reason why he wasn't in your life when you was younger, all the way up until you guys reconnected? Because that right there, I feel like, before you answer, I feel like that's key to overcoming and healing the hurt, depending on what that reason is why he wasn't in your life, which I feel like it's depending on what happened, it's very hard to justify why he wasn't in your life. So do you know the answer as to why he wasn't in your life for that long period of time?
Yes. A lot of it had to do with, that strong grandmom that puts her foot down and tries to block a lot of things that she feels as though are wrong. Put my mom in a position where she tried her best to, quote unquote, sneak me to see him so that I could get to know him and the family. I just found out my dad was in military, and he was pretty messed up from his second tour in Vietnam. And my mom gave him some time to get himself together. He had outside issues going on, but apparently his battle time, his service, tour of duty, whatever you want to call it, really had him in a situation where my mom just saw, okay, he's not getting himself together. I've waited 3 years and I'm going to move on because of other personal things that he never took care of. And she gave him that much time. Now, we've reconnected and it feels like I haven't missed a day, but I have missed a day, a lot of days.
You don't have any resentment? I know I would resent it, whether he's reconnected now or not. Whatever happened or transpired for him not to do that, you said with your stepfather just popped out of a closet one day in the way he was acting. Well, here you are 45, I think you said 45 years later.
Yes.
And then he's acting like you just popped out of a closet. Like, yes, he was probably messed up. Yes, war messed you up, taking lives, trying to preserve your own life, seeing people die, that messes you up. However, like, I mean, 45 years, anybody can like try to ask for forgiveness for what they did, but 45 years, I mean, that is a long time.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking like over 4 decades. And has he had another family within that time? Was he
Believe it
active
or
in the other
not,
family?
no. He was with another woman for a long term, but they never made a commitment or anything. I'm his only child. The woman has passed, and it's back to just he and I.
So this is what I would say, because that's a, I wouldn't say unique, but this is the first time that I heard it in that way. So it's unique to me. So I feel like that in the beginning, that's a legitimate reason, like mental health issues, especially coming out of the service. Because we talked about on the show before mental health issues that people deal with just living in Philadelphia, having PTSD and not dealing with it in a way that can progress into your adulthood. But you know, somebody being in the service and actually going into war and having those issues, and I guess in a way your mom was trying to save you from being a part of his life while he was going through mental health.
Hold it. Did your mom say she was trying to save you?
Well, that was my next point, because that's a talk that you need to have with your children, because what it did for you was make you feel like that I can't speak for you, but what it sounds like is you were looking for approval, because you will only look for approval if you feel like that you didn't have it. So not to have your father in your life, for me, made me feel like at that point in time when he moved out, that he didn't want to be with us, that he didn't want to be a part of our lives. So then you seek approval from other people because you feel like you're not getting approval from your parents, which is your father. So you're seeking approval from somebody that you feel like your mom feels like is an adequate man for her to be with. So of course you want that approval for you, because if your mom thinks he's good enough to be in her life, then he should be good enough to be in your life. But if your mom never had that conversation with you about the mental illnesses that your father might have been going through, because I think that would have brought a little more clarity into what was going on in that situation, as opposed to just, you know, your dad not here and I got this other guy and, you know, I love him and then he love you and then they get married and he like, you know, I dealt with you long enough, you know, just to keep your mom with me, and then we got married and now it's like, you know, she's not going to divorce me if I'm just being mean to you.
Mhm.
Okay, so what you said just before Avis answers, I'm going to throw this other element in there. Could her mom really had that conversation? Like, you can't have that conversation until that person is mature enough to have that conversation. And, you know, when we say mature enough, we talking like 16, 17.
Now,
So,
who determines maturity level for comprehension of what's going on in the child's life?
okay, who's going to determine it? I'm throwing out a ballpark number because I don't know how she was at 14 to 15 to 12 or 13. And then her opinion is going to be based on what she thinks she could do from her experience, which not necessarily could have been the right time frame for her mom to convey that information, because we all should be thinking positive about what we can mentally access and assess in a situation. So my only point, I'll rephrase it, maybe her mom was waiting for the right moment when her mom thought Avis could deal with the actual truth on what was going on with her father and how she made it work. Because still as a child, you don't understand. I don't care how educated or intelligent you are, what you can put together, you still don't understand a marriage as a child. You
No,
don't. Most people don't as an adult. Why it didn't work, you can't tell them that. So
that's
my
a
question to
conversation
you,
that you have more than once, though. You know, me splitting up with my partner, you know, the woman I had kids with, I still have, my sons are 10 and 11, and I still have conversations with them about it. So, or I could have been like, well, I need to wait till they're 15 or 16 before I have conversations, before they could cognitively understand why things aren't working out. Then I would leave that gap in there and they just looking at me like, yo, like you walked out on us, like you don't want to be with us. Instead of having that conversation and reassuring them over periods of time, not just talking to them, but also displaying that this is why it didn't work, and, you know, comfort them But if you never had that conversation with them, then you leave them to their own devices. You leave them to think.
Right, but you still tried to figure out the best course of action to do that.
Having a
And you used the
conversation.
knowledge that you had of your sons to figure out what's the best way to do it. So I'm saying her mom might have did that because we don't know what was going on. And Avis is saying that this is
But
a generational curse.
let's
So
so
how do
let's
you know
ask her,
that?
because we saying that
We
like
are going to ask her. I just had to
All
correct you.
right.
All right. We're going to ask her, and then we're going to wake Ruben up over there because he's just chilling. But go ahead, Avis. Do you need us to rephrase the question, or you got it?
Well, I did ask my mom several times. Once in my early teens, because I was just fed up with some of the things that her husband would say. You know, from the comments of, mind you, I tried to shadow him. So if we're in the auto parts store and he liked to talk a lot, somebody would say, "Oh, cute kid. You know, she must look like her mom." His comment was always, "That's not mine. It's my wife's kid." And even said it about my twin daughters when they went down to visit. Those aren't my grandkids. It's her kids. But I back to the question. I did ask mom several times, and she treated my question as if I've given you the best that I can give you. Why can't you be satisfied? Or what is the stem of my rebellion? That is your father. And I never could accept him for how he was treating me. You know, not going to get into the abuse, but 2x4s have been broken on my back because I'm not going to give in and cry anymore. You've beat me so many times. You know, it was extreme. It was extreme. And no matter what I said, no matter how I was respectful or behaved,
So
never.
this is like a combination of things, because you wouldn't necessarily know how it would play out in your mentality or your frame of mind if you didn't have an abusive stepfather. So if your father would have just left and your mom, you know, if it was just you and her, or if she found a good man that treated you well, you probably wouldn't be in the position that you're in now. But because
Right.
your mom chose somebody that wasn't kind to you, didn't treat you with respect and like his own child, then it was a combination effect added on to, you know, your dad not being there. Because then, you know, if a parent isn't there, whether it be a mother or a father, and you're being treated wrongly, you kind of want that parent that's not there to be your savior. It's like, why isn't this parent here? Because all parents, you would hope all parents want their children to be safe. So, you know, if you don't have that and you have that male role who is supposed to be the protector and the provider of the house beating on you, then you're kind of longing for the real protector and provider of the house, which was your father, which wasn't mentally capable at that time, I guess, to be there and help you.
Mm-hmm. And because of it, I've always, I mean, I'm seeking out help, but I've always felt like I was never good enough. You know, it just never good enough. Like, why wasn't dad there to help? Why is she with him? I wasn't good enough for his approval. And it just carried on. It carried on. And I, like I said, I've seen that behavior trickle and into the fourth generation. I'm the third, and I passed it on, unfortunately, to my daughters.
Do you think you passed it on genetically, or do you think you passed it on with your actions?
With my actions. If I had made better choices instead of always looking for approval in everybody, the choices that my daughters have made, especially one of them, would never have been, because it you know, it's like somebody shopping at Neiman Marcus versus somebody shopping at Walmart. The person who is at Walmart, hey, I'm getting a great bargain. Look at what I'm getting. And then they experience the quote unquote better life. So they might not look at Walmart and its bargains. They might say, this is what I'm accustomed to. And
Okay,
I
so
never accept something lower than Neiman Marcus.
okay,
See, I'm not
so
no more.
yeah, I'm gonna say this, and I've been throwing this around lately, and that's the wise mind. You have your emotional mind, and you have your rational mind. The wise mind is when you meet somewhere in the middle because your emotions dictate a lot of things, and then at some point you got to be rational, and you should always look to try to get in the middle and understand that your emotions sometimes can run out of control, and sometimes your rational side could just bludgeon the emotions and then put you in a bad situation as well, because we are the sum of our experiences. So as far as the wise mind go with you, because you said you're trying to get help for that, or help for the impact of what went on with your dual fathers. The wise mind should tell you, you were a child. You weren't responsible for the choices that they made. Now, the choices that they made had an impact on you, not the choices that you made as a child. They made those choices for you, and those impacted you. Even your father that wasn't there, that impacted you probably more so than your stepfather, who, mind you, was a piece of shit, in my opinion. So those things, we are the sum of our experiences. I have no doubt that you carried that on. And as you said, you made bad decisions looking for acceptance, but you're taking the first step. You understand that you made bad decisions and you're trying to correct it. You can only tell your daughter the decisions that you made that was bad. And I know you saying you affected your daughter, but you weren't the only one that was affecting your daughter, because your mom made those bad decisions. You said it was generational. So your mom made those bad decisions, and then your daughter learned from grandmom too. So whereas though you may not have been in that situation that your mom put you in, you may not put your kids in there. She still saw her grandmom and the choices and took the advice from her. Is she close with her grandma?
Nah.
But she does listen to
Because
her.
of him.
Huh?
Because of him.
Because
You
of because of the fake whatever he is, because he ain't
right.
the granddaddy. I don't know what the hell's wrong with him. But sometimes people can see what that other parent does and can't stand them and still emulates them in their mind and don't know why. Because maybe she had this relationship with this guy all these years. She wasn't there for the 2x4s and all that other bullshit. You know what I'm saying? So she might be looking for gratification with other men, and then she's looking for the things around her that she sees and not even know she's doing that. So you can't be held totally responsible for what your daughter choices is, because she's grown. Now, did your lifestyle and stuff that go on have an impact, the choices that you made? Of course, but she has the choice to try to change stuff. All you can do is try to lead her that way. But first, you got to lead yourself that way. You can't help anybody until you help yourself in that situation. So, Ruben, what do you think about any of this? You've been quiet for a while.
I think first of all, whenever you got a parent that's basically mistreating a child, that parent themselves, that's something that they probably went through themselves. So this is not me making an excuse for what happened to you, you know, in your childhood. But if we talk about generational, bad behavior, which is what this seems to be right now, at some point, you know, your stepfather, he himself was mistreated, and he himself probably didn't grow up with a dad, or he did grow up with a dad that treated him in a way that made him think somehow that treating you that way was okay, because that's all he knew. You know, this is in no way, shape, or form me trying to make an excuse for him, but this is just based on what some of the things you've said, and even what you're saying. You know, maybe if you weren't treated the way you were, you would have made better decisions, different decisions. You know, for how you would raise your twin daughters and everything. So it's almost like, you know, there's a There's a story I heard a while back where it's a husband and a wife, and the husband, the wife cooks him this amazing dish every time. And finally one day he's like, hey, listen, why do you cook the pot roast in the pan and you cut the ends? And she's like, I don't know, that's what my mom did. And then he's like, all right, well, let's go find your mom, let's go ask her. He's like, hey, mom, why do you cut the pot roast in the ends? He's like, I don't know, that's how my mom did it. He's like, all right, let's go ask the grandmother, because the great grandmother, because she was still alive. You're like, you go ask the great grandmother. And he's like, yeah, great grandma, why'd you cut the pot roast at the end before you cook it? She's like, because our stove was too small and we didn't have enough space, so that I had to cut the ends in order to make the meat fit inside of the oven. But 3 generations down, you're still doing the same thing. You don't even know why it's happening. I say all this to say, if I don't know that man's background, but I do know people that were abused. Typically, they pass it down, because especially if they didn't take the time to go get help, especially specifically in our community.
He probably didn't have help on his time frame too, just to be honest.
Exactly. So it's like passing, growing up in those times, not having, necessarily the proper tools to be helped, not having the proper, kids didn't have rights. Even today, kids, a lot of times kids don't necessarily have rights. That's why you got places like DHS and things like that. They're kind of like set up in a way to try to help curb, the abuse that children go through on a daily basis. So if the parent themselves growing up, they didn't have a good childhood, unfortunately, when they have kids, they're not gonna have a good childhood. And he should have done a better job as far as like picking out somebody who maybe didn't have a kid, if he didn't want a kid, if he wasn't gonna be able to accept your mother and you, and not have you go through that. But unfortunately, misery loves company. If he was miserable.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in on that because I want to clarify something. You and Aaron are younger than me and Avis. When me and Avis was coming up, your parents whooped your ass because that's what they were taught they were supposed to do. Your grandparents whooped your ass because that's what they were supposed to do.
Hey,
there
man,
was no DSS, DHS coming to save you.
I am a lot younger than you, but I got my fair share of ass.
Yeah, but nobody would have.
Parent. So
right, but nobody would have said a word. Nobody would have made a phone call. They would have just been like, "You had that shit coming." Okay, but now I understand that you're saying if it happened to you 9 out of 10 times, you're gonna do it. I disagree with that because I got my ass whipped like a champ, and the most I ever did was pop my daughter on the hand. That was it. So, and she laughed at me when I did it. She thought it was a fucking joke because it didn't even hurt. So I'm just, my point is, if you get your ass whipped, that ain't no reason to say, this person, he brought that shit on because that's what happened to him. That can happen in certain cases. I understand that. But that shouldn't be an excuse in every case.
I'm not justifying it.
I'm not saying you justifying it. I'm just clarifying what you're saying for everybody. I'm not saying that you're wrong either. But there's other negative connotations that go along with this. The things that he said to go along with that. Whether he got his ass whipped or not, she's not mine. They're not my grandkids.
Listen,
why are you following me around? Like, there's a lot of shit that goes along.
I'm 150% with you when you call him an asshole and everything else under the sun.
No, I called him a piece of shit.
I mean, piece of shit, asshole, same thing. It's all stinks. The point is,
one needs to go down the toilet in the sewer.
But the point is, abuse comes in many forms, and if you're gonna deal with somebody that has kids and you're not mature enough, or you're not stable enough, and you're not aware enough to understand that, like, look, it's not gonna be just the two of y'all. It's another person's life involved, and you're gonna have to make sure that that person's life, that the other person that came out of that woman that you're looking to date, you're looking to marry, you're looking to be with, that was around before y'all got together, you're gonna have to take care of. You're gonna have to take care of that person. You're gonna have to raise that person. You're gonna have to nurture and love and care for that person. If you're not mature enough to make that decision, then you shouldn't get with that person, because, unfortunately, this is what happens when you do. you grow up and then you don't get treated as you should. You don't get the love that you should, and it's a scar, and it's an ugly scar, and it's something that a lot of people don't deal with well. Fortunately, you're still with us. Other people take their lives for stuff like this because it's like it's an unfortunate common occurrence. You know, you hear it, and for a lot of people, it's like, well, that's how it is. Especially I know like places like that's down south. You know, you got a lot of situations where like that's a common thing. You know, that's a pretty common thing. It's not okay, but it's just like in a lot of different families they go through it, and it's just kind of like water under the sun.
Well,
I mean,
it's a common thing now, but when I was younger, you had a lot of blended families down south. And when they said they all my kids, they could go in there, have one kid and go in there with a woman that had like 10. They all my kids. They be trying to give them their last name. If you don't believe me, Avis, am I lying?
You're
That's how it
not
used to
lying
be.
at all.
They was like, we all together. So when you say that, once again, I'm gonna say like it's more people that do the positive than that do the negative in this situation. Now I have another question for Avis because while Ruby was talking, it made me think about something. Did your mom have any other kids by him, by the new
Yes.
guy?
Yes.
So you guys were treated differently.
Yes.
Okay, different in what way? Just give me one or two. I know it's probably a multitude of shit there.
The abuse was nowhere near what I got. The talking to was nowhere near me. I was always treated like the outsider.
So it was physical and mental abuse
Yeah,
inflicted by this guy.
and verbal.
How's your relationship with your half sister? Was she
I
disgusted by
have,
what he did?
oh yeah, I have 3 half sisters. The baby surviving one treats me like he did. So that's estranged. My oldest brother, who's 8 years my junior, that's estranged. So I have a middle sister. She can do no wrong. You know, she's the Christian, she's the missionary out of the group. And then the other 2, I'm very close to them because, and they empathize. They saw it. Some of it even happened to my baby brother, nowhere near my magnitude. So they have compassion. They don't have pity on me, but they have compassion and they understand, you know, the pain that was still existing. And they supported my reunion with my dad. There were the only 2 that were actually happy for me.
Now,
So
see, that's a rough way to go because they're going to all, especially the youngest one, that's probably the usually families are easier on the last child. And, you know, he probably softened his stance in life by the time the last one came. But that's still a tricky situation because, I mean, I would resent everything. Like, this is where I'm an asshole. Okay, we're adults now. You saw what was going on because you lived it. So if you feel like you don't want a connection with me, fuck it, go on your way. I'm good. You know what I'm saying? Like if they feel that way, I'm gonna assume that they wasn't helping you when you needed help because we all need help in our life. So if they wasn't helping you when you needed help, like what do I need you for? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like blood is blood, but your friends you choose. The people that's closest to you, your friends, you choose them. Your relatives, you just get what the fuck you get. You know what I mean? If they good, they good. You can get a good one. But if they bad, they bad. But they not your choice. They're kind of like grafted onto you. You know what I mean? And you guys are all adults now. So I think maybe because if they got to accept what he did and they got to accept you, they can't really accept themselves because it's like they came from that. And that may be, I'm not justifying it, but that could be partially why you have a bad relationship with some of them. But I'm gonna tell you right here, you can have the same mother and father and still not have a great relationship with your siblings.
Right.
It's not determined that you're going to have a great relationship with your siblings. Anybody that tell you you should have a great relationship with your siblings, you should just stop listening to them until their lips start moving and be like, I'm good. Because it's not going to happen. It very rarely happens. There's always one person that's on the outside looking at, or one family member that you really didn't like, but you still family, so you got to deal with them. But like I said, your friends are who you choose. So let's talk about choices. I'm going to assume you saying that these choices affected you when it came to your relationships. And I'm going to assume because you felt like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you felt like you weren't as good as a person as you are, because you are a good person, that you felt like you had to pursue people. How, am I correct in assuming this?
You're correct.
Okay, so one, I'm going to tell you, I don't know your history before the present, but I'm going to assume that, you know, when you pursue people, you feel like you maybe made the wrong choice. Okay, here's a news flash for you. There's nobody out here that's ever been in a relationship that never pursued the wrong person. Now, sometimes that relationship ended and it didn't go any further, but a lot of times those situations didn't go any further because stuff happened before the situation went further. You know what I mean? Like it ended before it could advance to the point where some people like, what the hell was I thinking before I got to them? So don't tell yourself all your choices is just your choices because of what these two guys did. Just making the wrong choices. There are times when you just make a bad choice. You know what I'm saying? And that bad choice led to a bad relationship, led to a bad marriage, led to being a bad parent because you was with the wrong person. So you shouldn't prosecute yourself for that. I'm going to say, like, yes, you want to make sure you don't make those bad choices, but everybody sitting right here will tell you it's something that they don't look for in a significant other right now. Am I correct, Joe? Because you had bad situations. So with certain things that if you were out there looking right now, you wouldn't look for. So you're addressing your problems. You know that you did make bad choices. Maybe it was your upbringing that can cause those bad choices, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just bad choices. So what I'm going to say to you is don't lock them all together. You know what I mean? You might just be the person that pursues what they want. And that's not really a bad thing either, because sometimes you want something and you pursue it. Now, you may find out somewhere along the line that's not really what you needed, but it was what you wanted and you acted on it. You acted on it. And that's okay. We've all done that. That's nothing for you to be worried about. And if you two guys disagree with me, please let me hear it.
No, I agree. I think I like the part when you mentioned, not lumping up all your decisions, into one pot because just of how, your upbringing was and, your experiences, because at the end of the day, you probably would have still made some of the same choices that you made had you not had, that upbringing, because you just never know. Like you could very well just be wired to do certain things just of genetic makeup. Now, the experiences might have, nudged you a little, gave you a little extra motivation to go make some of the choices, but that doesn't necessarily mean you wouldn't have made the choices anyway. Like I know for me, on my father's side, a lot of them had been entrepreneurs. So I wasn't necessarily looking to become an entrepreneur. Life put me in the path to become an entrepreneur. But I think had I taken the non-entrepreneurial route early on, I still would have found myself looking to get out and become an entrepreneur just because it's just like the way I think, my motivation, my drive. Like being in a 9-to-5 setting never would have worked for me. I would have been one of those people that like every time I turn around, I'm in a new job, and it's like, yo, why don't you just sit still and do this and do that? And I'm like, yo, I hear you, but I just can't. Like I feel constricted. I feel like I can't. Like I don't understand what it is. It's like, oh, you doing this now? Oh, you doing that now? And some of those people. You met some of those people. You probably maybe you are that person, but life didn't give you the opportunity to push you in a certain specific direction. You kind of have to like find that way, because that's just how things go sometimes. For me, fortunately, because I didn't have that many choices, I didn't have that many options, I kind of had to become an entrepreneur. But if I had the choice and I had the option, I would have went to college, I would have studied international business, I would have been traveling, I would have been working for a corporate something, and I'd make decent money, but I'd be miserable. I'd be miserable because like
you wouldn't have been miserable in college. You would have went and been partying.
Yeah, partying in college and working, like, that's only 4 years of partying. Working, once you're done partying, you start working. That work takes over. Like that's really what the reality is. I talked to a lot of my friends, that went to college, and everybody's like, yo, man, like. And a lot of them make really good money, but it's like the chains, the regulations, the rules, that box that you're in essentially. Once you're in that 9-to-5 and you're in that corporate setting and you're working for that corporation, you're working for that job, you got those certain rules that you got to follow. A lot of times, like even with like your social media, depending on what you do, you don't want to be posting anything because a lot of these companies are looking. People getting fired for stuff they posting on their social media pages and all that. So, I can't get fired for posting what I want to post. Now, I choose to not post, not post, and I have a personal social media page. But if I was to post, then granted, especially nowadays, they can always go and start putting negative things on your business page and start putting negative reviews and lower your rankings and all that. But they can't fire me. You know what I mean? Like, I would take, my business might take a hit, but you're not gonna get rid of me just because of that. And at the end of the day, everybody's always gonna need their haircut. So I'm kind of recession proof in that end. But I say all this to say you could still make you could have, just like Mel was saying, you would have made the decisions, that you've made regardless in a lot of case. But you just probably made them sooner, or you probably were more motivated to do it, which is what happened.
Or you probably was just immature and you had to learn. There's a learning curve that's here. Everybody's not the most mature person in their 20s or 30s, even their 40s. We make bad choices. We're infallible. We're human beings. Human beings make bad choices. What do we do from our bad choices? We learn from them. If we keep making it, then it's a way of a lifestyle and we're not willing to learn from it. But if you learn from it, okay, you learn from it. Aaron, what do you have to say?
So I forgot the question, but I'm gonna talk anyway. But so you had daughters, you feel like you made the wrong decision. I do have a question at the end of this, but because I feel like that everything has been like pulling the conversation down in a negative way. Not saying everybody's being negative, but I feel like the conversation is such a sad conversation. I want to ask a question to try to uplift the conversation towards the end of this. But so do your daughters have little girls? Do they have daughters?
One has children. The other one is sticking to her guns and her standards.
Okay, so I'm a firm believer of everything happens for a reason. And you went through the experience that you went through in order to help somebody. That is a negative experience that you unfortunately experienced, but something good can come out of every negative experience. So you feel like you didn't help your daughters in the way that you could have, because you feel like that, you carried out that generational curse on them. But now you have the opportunity, because one of your daughters has a little girl, to impart your wisdom. Even you can still do it to your daughters, but to impart your wisdom to your granddaughter.
Yeah.
Make sure that that generational curse does not trickle down to her, even though her mom is going to make certain decisions. But you know, you can try to negate that as much as possible, but just imparting wisdom, that's what grandparents do. You know, they like the most wise people around, imparting that wisdom and the experience that you went through, and probably being candid about it. And hopefully, you know, at a young age, they will start to understand how they need to be treated, how they should want to be treated by a man, and the type of man that they will want to have in their life. By you telling them the type of men that you had in your life that you didn't want and didn't deserve. And hopefully that conversation would, you know, carry them and give them morals and standards that they will be able to uphold going into their teenage years and into their adulthood. The one question that I did have was, what does your healing process look like now? Because you had the opportunity to reunite with your father. So is there a healing process happening right now? Like, what steps are you taking to heal? And do you see some positive light at the end of the tunnel so far after meeting your father, or even before meeting your father?
Yes, yes, yes. I'm meditating, doing a lot of meditation. I've jumped back into the Bible, just for guidance, you know, to help my spine stay strong. When I see that I'm creating my same thought process, I remind myself to stop, because it's been a lifelong habit of always thinking of others and always chasing. And I it's a constant battle, but it's a battle that I'm determined to win. And I'm talking to my daughters, and I even started to talk to my mom about it, which is very hard to talk to her about some of the pain, because sometimes people are so used to a situation, they're blind, and or they can't accept, or they just want to stay in their fantasy. But I am doing a lot of counsel. I have a lot of counsel going on, and I'm feeling better about myself. My self-esteem, I can tell, is going to levels that I've never had before.
All right, I'm
Okay,
gonna say,
go ahead, Henry.
I just want to say this before I forget it, but meditation is very powerful. So I'm happy to hear that you're meditating. You have a lot of limiting beliefs that stop you from moving forward. And even though you acknowledge some of the things that, like the reoccurring thoughts that you have in your mind, and you stop yourself from doing it, you still have limiting beliefs that let those thoughts keep coming into your mind. And one thing that I will say, you have to get to the point where you're going to have if you're going to have a conversation with your mom, it already feels like that you want her to accept what you're going to say. So you're still looking for acceptance. If you want to heal, just get it out. Because right now you're having a conversation with us. You're telling us everything that you went through, and that's you talking, but you're not looking for us to accept you, so to speak. But when you talk to your mom, you're looking for your mom to accept your experience, which she isn't necessarily going to do, because it wasn't her experience. We can all have this conversation right now, and I can talk to Ruben tomorrow about it. Like, the experience I had on the show yesterday was, I was so sad and everything was so negative. And Ruben might be like, no, I didn't have that experience. So even though we're in the same situation, we're going through the same thing right now all together, we're all having different experiences. So I can't expect any of you to co-host my experiences. So when you have a conversation with your mom or anybody else about what you went through, it has to be a conversation for you, not for anybody else to accept what you're about to say, because 9 times out of 10, they're not going to accept it. And then that's just going to make you backslide, because you're not getting the acceptance that you're looking for when you're having these conversations. So if you're going to talk to your mom, just talk to your mom. Tell her everything you feel, And whether she likes it or not, you're still expressing yourself and how you felt in those moments because it's true for you. It doesn't have to be true for her in order for it to help you heal. But as long as you want it to be true for her, you're not going to heal because it's never going to be true for her. Even if she feels like that is true for her, she's not going to tell you. Obviously, she didn't tell you all these years. She's not going to come outright and tell you that she agrees with you because that's never going to happen. So you're never going to heal if you're still looking for acceptance, even when you're telling your story.
And now, see, I'm going to piggyback on what you just said. And I agree 110% with you, Aaron. When you tell your mom, she has to humble herself to agree with what you're saying. And that's never going to happen, you know, so get that out your mind. I was going to suggest that you write a letter. You write a letter because I feel like words, I used to say this to the kids all the time. Somebody bullying you, write a letter to the teacher. You know what I mean? Write a letter to your parent, have your parents sign it. Words become more impactful when you read them and it's put down on paper. Write her a letter, you know, like what my Ali, a 4-page letter. What was it? Write the letter. Write a long ass letter. Send her the letter. If she chooses to read the letter or not read the letter, it doesn't matter. You got those feelings off of your chest. You said what you needed to say. What she chooses to do with it, who the hell cares? It's done. You know what I mean? But the impact for you would be 110% better than the impact of like just sitting down there and then she want to argue back and forth and want to say this and this and that. You know, I think we sat on here one time with Focus, and Focus was like, the reason that people ask questions is not because they want to give you and they want you to agree with them when they ask you a question. They don't want you to disagree with them when they ask a question. So write a letter. It ain't no questions in there. This is just how I feel. This is what I think your part in it was. This is how I feel about the whole situation. And that's it. She probably gonna read 2 sentences and throw the shit in the trash. But the impact for you reading that letter and taking the time to write that letter is going to be amazing for your healing process. And also, you brought up what you do for others. See, these guys don't know how many fundraisers, the Christmas bus, all the charitable organizations that you were part of. They don't know about that, but I do. You shouldn't penalize yourself because your calling is to help others. Now, I'm not saying that the way that this person treated you, and maybe you shouldn't look at it that way too. You shouldn't look at it that you want to help others just because this person treated you like that. I don't think that's true. I think that's just in your nature. You understand what I'm saying? Yes. This person, usually when somebody, and we've been brought up this point, a lot of times when people are treated a certain way, they treat their kids a certain way, and then their kids pick up on some of that shit and treat their kids a certain way. That didn't happen. So that was probably your calling to do for others. So you don't give him the credit for what you do right there. That's all you. That ain't him. You know what I'm saying? That's your choices, not your experiences. So it's 2 entirely different things. So we're coming up on time and we're at the end of the show. Avis, do you have something that you want to talk about or say before we go into who's to blame? Do you feel better after this conversation about what was going on? Did it give you some little insight where you could like, maybe I should try this, maybe I should try that? You know, because it is a sad tone, you know what I mean? But sometimes when you talk about things, it's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth, really, because some things aren't good things. But I mean, it should be addressed. And I thank you for coming on the show and talking about this. I know it's a hard topic to talk about, you know, putting your life experiences out there for other people to see. But I guarantee you this is going to help. And this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to help one person at a time. Then maybe they'll turn to the left and help the person to their left. And we just keep on going 7 billion times. It might take a while to get across the ocean. We just keep on going 7 billion times. So you two guys, who's to blame for this situation? What can we do to keep this situation from happening? And are you starting first, Aaron?
I think this is what Aaron shines right here.
Do I have to move closer? It starts with the parents.
I blame the parents. It's the parents' fault. I mean, all the way across the board. You know, if it's the mother, it's the mother's fault for allowing a man in a situation that is not suitable to be around her daughter. And I blame the father as well, even though health issues and things like that did occur. 45 years is a very long time. I can't speak for him, but for me, I can't be away from my kids without seeing their face for a day. You know, so it was just, it's hard all the way across the board, but at the same time to have somebody grow up and have these issues, these limiting beliefs and expectations that aren't going fulfilled, it starts with the parents. And you have to have a talk with your kids on a daily basis in order to uplift them and help break down limiting beliefs that may occur in their life later on into adulthood. So yeah, it's the parents.
Big surprise there, Ruben.
The government for Ruben.
No, he gonna start with the parents too.
I
Can't blame the government for this.
I gotta piggyback with Aaron, man. It's definitely a parental issue right here, and it's unfortunate, you know, when people get together and, you know, they still want to put themselves first. If you're dealing with somebody, if you're a single male and you're dealing with somebody, you're dealing with a woman and she has a child, you have to understand that going into the relationship, you know, that woman has to put that child first. That child comes first. And, you know, if it's not something that you can deal with, if it's not something that you're okay with, it's not something that you can comprehend, then maybe you need to move on and find somebody that doesn't have a child. Because, you know, unfortunately this happens, and this happens a lot. And, you know, it's not ideal for that child. It's not ideal for that relationship. It's not ideal for anybody involved, you know, regardless of if the woman and the man really like each other. If everything can't be accepted as a package deal, then you should just move on and find somebody that doesn't come with, you know, not to call the child baggage, but, you know, baggage. It's definitely the parents' fault. I gotta blame the parents. That's who I blame.
Okay, so I'm gonna say the parents slash, and I'm going to explain the slash in a second. The parents you do have to blame, whether it was the woman that allows her child to be treated differently, or it's the man coming in that treats the child differently. Both of them to blame. Both of them are fucked up, if you ask me. Both of them, if you're going to be in a blended family, be in a blended family. If you're not going to be in a blended family, then stop wasting each other's time. You know, I don't care what's going on. It's not that important where you can just mess up kids just to fucking mess them up because you're making these choices. So that's what I'm going to say about that. So if you're an asshole or a piece of shit, whatever connotation you want to put on it, and you can hear my voice, think about it. You can make a change. You got a man that just came back 45 years later. So don't tell me you can't make a change, because in a sense, it was hard to come back 45 years later. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not excusing him being gone for 45 years because that's, in my mind, it's unacceptable. But the way I think, and looking at it from another perspective is to walk up to somebody and say, listen, I'm your dad and I fucked up 45 years later, almost 50 years later. So that has to be addressed, and that's a positive in this situation. And I don't think we put a lot of spin on it, but that is a positive in the situation. Now, let's get to the slash. The slash is all them son of bitches that just sit down and don't say nothing to the parents that's treating these kids wrong. And I mean your damn family members, I mean your friends. If you sit down there and you don't like what somebody's doing to their kids because you know it's wrong, Your friendship with them should not be that important that you can't tell them that they doing wrong. You should be able to tell them they doing wrong. If you're a family member, I have brothers now, they don't have kids. But if they're treating their kids wrong, I'm gonna pull them to the side and say, you fucked up. Why are you doing that in that situation? Why are you treating your stepchild like that? I'm gonna tell them to their face. We don't have enough of that because people feel like because you're a parent, you're always right. No, you're not always right. We had shows where we talked about this. There's no guide to being a parent. People don't know what's acceptable in being a parent in this country. People don't understand what the rules are in being a parent in this country. It's a learning experience now. There's no defined rules. So if you're doing something wrong, the person that actually supposed to be your friend or your loved one or your relative, they should be able to tell you that you're doing wrong. And you should be able to listen. You may not fucking agree with it. You might want to argue them then and down. It pisses them the fuck off. But the person that you listen to is the people that you respect the most. And 9 out of 10 times, it ain't your family members. It's the friend that you chose. So I want to thank everybody for joining us for Combustible Elements. Listen, we out here. We on all forms of media. We're looking to talk. We're looking to have guests. If you want to talk about something, if we can help you with something, listen, we're here. Shoot us an email, make a comment on the channel. We will talk about everything because we have problems that people are not talking about. They're either afraid to talk about it. It's not ratings boosters. It ain't sensationalized. It ain't going to get 1,000,001 views. But yet again, those topics may help somebody. And if you can help one person, they're going to pass that blessing on. So thank you for joining us.
Is our guest
Avis, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
What'd you say? What'd you say, Aaron?
Want to weigh in on who's to blame?
That was me weighing in on who's to blame.
I said the guest.
Oh, do the guests want to weigh in on who's to blame? Do you want to weigh in on this?
No, no.
I didn't think you wanted to weigh in on this. You know, once again, I want to thank everybody for joining us. We're out here on all media streams. We're trying to build the foundation from the bottom to the top. You start at the bottom, we work up, we correct any problem, but we can't correct it unless we talk. I want to thank Avis for joining us. I want to thank Aaron the Hitman. Aaron the Hitman is out here. He's really out there. Look for him. Google his name. Trust me, you will have an impactful few minutes if you Google his name. And he also does coaching. So look for him. You got Ruben the Monarch doing what he do, Monarchs, whatever you want. Catch him if you can. If you want a shot at catch him at Broaders on Broad. If not, well, he doing something. He get with you when he get with you. And I'm AKA Big Mel, but tonight I'm the Colombian King. So I just got back in the US. I'm going out here, sit out here like I want a tan, even though the sun ain't out. And I'm going to look forward to talking to you later. Peace out, everybody.
Bye.